Hi, everybody. It's Sharyl Attkisson. Welcome to another edition of Full Measure After Hours. Today, one man's garage invention that cured himself from a threatening disease and may end up helping millions. Today's podcast is an incredible story that begins with one man's unfortunate health crisis, but ends with him finding a way to cure himself with a discovery that now stands to help millions. It also exposed remarkable flaws in America's process for finding and approving effective medical treatments. You'll be hearing from Bradley Burnham, now founder and CEO of Turn Therapeutics, but as you'll hear, that's not how it all started.
So I can tell you it was December 2009. I'd been a medical device rep for about a decade, which means I was in the hospitals. I was walking around, touching the patients, in the operating room a lot. And hospitals are sort of cesspools of bacteria. You can pick things up on surfaces. And I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. So I picked up a really, really deadly strain of bacteria. It's called CRE. The healthcare practitioners out there know that that's not a good one to get.
The kind that the antibiotics don't work well
A
for?
highly resistant organism. It's about a 70% fatality rate once it hits your bloodstream. About quarter of the time, it manifests itself in the soft tissue. In my case, I started getting abscesses on my neck and scalp. The morning that I remember in December, it was actually toward the end of December, I'd gone to bed the night before. Everything was normal. I'd brushed my teeth, looked in the mirror, didn't see anything out of the ordinary. And I woke up the next morning and this whole side of my head was black. And my ear was like twice its normal size and hot because it was infected. And that's a sign of infection. Obviously terrifying. My dad's a cardiologist. I called him. He was a local hospital physician. He said, meet me at the ER right now. I didn't even make it into the actual ER door before the infectious disease doctor in the hallway, who happened to be a colleague of his, said you need emergency surgery right now, which is terrifying, when you can't even get the time to get examined.
And so just to go over the course of time, from what I understand, It just continued to spread. There was nothing they could do?
I would say I'd call it more recurrent. It definitely did spread. 6 days after my first emergency surgery, which took 4 hours, and there was not even an anesthesiologist on staff that day, like we had to rush it that quick. This was all under local. I mean, I must have had 50 or 60 nerve block injections throughout. I was there again within a week for another abscess. And that just became a recurring theme of the next 4 to 5 years of my life.
So medical science did not, as far as you knew, have the ability to stop this, fix you.
I will say that the physicians I was working with did not have the tools in their bag. The pills that they were giving me, dozens upon dozens of antibiotic courses, IV antibiotics at one point, the surgeries, the scraping, the cutting, nothing was working. I don't blame the physicians. These were great physicians. They just didn't have the tools to stop this.
Most people, that's probably not, maybe that virus itself or whatever that was is somewhat unique, but a lot of people have stories about not being able to be cured by modern medicine. What made you think that maybe you could develop something that would cure yourself?
When I was in the pacemaker industry, I remember that Europe always got things a few generations before us. And that was just always in my mind. When I wanted to see what we were going to get next, I would look over there. So I had the thought, at least, the initial inclination, when you're lying on the couch eating antibiotics like Tic Tacs all day long, I mean, you don't have much else to do. Just getting your wound dressing changes is your daily routine. And I looked over there and I saw that there was something that they had that we did not have yet, which is no surprise because Europe tends to be 3 to 5 years before us on products like wound care. That might help me. And when you're that desperate, you go off script. Maybe I can get this ingredient. Maybe I could do something with it. Maybe I could give it to my doctors. So I didn't necessarily even know where things were going at that point. I love where they've gone. But I just wanted to help myself at that point.
So what did you do?
So it actually makes me laugh when I think back on this story, because there's a great Joe Walsh quote that I often say that, when you look back on your life, it feels like a bunch of chaotic events, but then it actually sort of feels like a novel later on. And I think of that quote. I started ordering ingredients on like Alibaba.com and chemical websites. And they were shipping to my garage. I mean, then I got a barrel of petrolatum because I wanted something greasy, because when they were packing the wounds, it hurts really bad. And when the stuff dried up, I didn't want it to stick to the wound. And then I got pots and pans, literally from like Bed Bath & Beyond. I probably used a coupon when I got them. And a barrel of petrolatum, a 55-gallon drum, just delivered to my garage. And I'm convinced to this day my neighbors probably thought I was working on something else, which is why I got this industry nickname of Breaking Brad, ironically.
Breaking Brad.
The parody on the show.
And petrolatum is sort of like Vaseline?
It actually, so Vaseline is 100% petrolatum. And I actually got corrected on this a lot in the beginning. Petroleum is sort of the unrefined version of it. It's got more oils and waxes in it. Makes it more flammable too. So it is Vaseline. And I got a $69 mortar mixer from Amazon that I turned into a homogenizer. I started just trying to whip these ingredients together. And about 100 tries and a chemical burn or two later, I figured out a way to fuse this liquid ingredient into this petrolatum, this Vaseline consistency, without an ingredient in the middle, without an emulsifier, which thankfully I have a friend who's a patent attorney. He said, hey, you just mixed oil and water together.
And made it stay.
And I made it stay. It became stable, and then it was stable again and stable again. Once I got to a recipe, I guess I could call it, that wasn't actually injuring me, I decided to look at the FDA guidances and, look for vendors and how are people figuring out if these products work. And
what was the secret ingredient that mattered?
So it's called polyhexanide, PHMB, which I've sat at the head of major government agencies in the US with division chiefs. And it's very similar to chlorhexidine, which is the stuff that they usually scrub you with before surgery, but they hadn't heard of this ingredient. And in the UK, this was a consensus document, which means they'd sort of decided as a group we should use this consistently from 2010.
For resistant wounds?
For every wound, for antisepsis. They use it as a food preservative. They use it as, it's safe, it's strong, and it's standard of care there.
So you were using some trial and error stuff going on, I guess, in your garage.
You could say that.
You applied this to yourself, and when and how did you realize it was working?
So after I found out from the lab that it actually worked on the organism that was causing my problems, I gave it to the doctors because they have freedom to use things, as they wish, and I showed them the data.
But you didn't just rub it on your...
No, I was there was always I didn't want to touch that without the doctor's at least permission. So they put it in there, and the wound started to close. And these abscesses used to take months to close.
How soon did it start to look better?
Weeks. And you can tell quickly on these really deep, chronic abscesses when the tissue that looks healthier, when it starts to actually look better. It was quick. So
an ingredient that existed, widely used in Europe, relatively unknown in this country.
Relatively is sort of an understatement. I would say almost entirely unknown. It's been in like a contact lens cleaner as a preservative at one point, but that's about it.
So you make it into a product that can be used on wounds.
Yeah.
What's next now that you know it works for you? You probably want to tell other people.
What's next was I wanted everybody to have this. As soon as I found out Neosporin had never been FDA approved, which is sort of the initial search for information, what is all this crap they're using on me? What is all this stuff they're using on me that isn't working? And I found out Neosporin was never FDA approved, 75 years old, doesn't work. I wanted other people to have this Neosporin consistency product that actually worked to help them, because I know I'm not the only person who goes through resistant wound infections. So I said, hey, I've got an iPhone and a 401k. I can take on pharma and big device. So I started running the test to get it an FDA clearance. I wanted that stamp of clearance from the FDA. I ran all the tests, paid for it myself. Took it through the FDA from Kinko's. Actually was working from Kinko's, and I put together the binder there. And I got it cleared at the end of 16, and things just sort of went from there.
People talk about the process of getting a drug approved by the FDA. You said cleared, not approved, so this is over-the-counter type thing?
So medical devices are considered cleared, and drugs are considered approved.
But people talk about in any event, this is so complicated and expensive to do what's required. Yeah. Why was not that the case for you?
Oh, it was not just complicated and expensive, it was antiquated. So I just read and read and read. There are very lengthy, very boring guidance documents out there for how to do this. And I just thought to myself, I've got to do this. So I taught myself the process. I mean, there were so many steps along the way where you could see where the FDA has not been modernized since the last Modernization Act of 1997. It was the last time they got a full legislative overhaul was in 97. Even the Adobe files that you had to send in had to be numbered with a correct form, like 001 underscore 002. My first 4 attempts got kicked back, like you failed. I couldn't even send them the information. So the instructions are out there. The process is so analog in a digital era and so nuanced and so convoluted that I think people they end up just going to the consultants and the legal experts, and that's when they find out they can't afford it.
You open the fridge, there's nothing there. So what's it gonna be? Greasy pizza? Sad drive-through burgers? Dish by Blue Apron is for nights like that. These are the pre-made meals of your dreams. At least 20 grams of protein, no artificial flavors or colors, no chopping, no cleanup, no guilt. Keep the flavor, ditch the subscription. Get 20% off your first 2 orders with code APRON20. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms for more.
How long did this take you and how much money did you spend?
For the initial FDA clearance, I spent, including the review fee, $24,000, which I know is a lot less money, but it also shows you how much money is going into consultants' pockets, lawyers' pockets, internal waste, because this product got the same tests from the same or better vendors as everybody else. It went through the same regulatory process. It went through the same agency. And so what's the difference?
You could bring a medicine to market for $24,000.
This was, well, in theory, if I wanted to make it like Neosporin, I could do it for no approval. Because products like that, you can just, if you had a Dun & Bradstreet number, we could go to a computer right now and actually start making Neosporin with a contract manufacturer. You just register it under a website called DailyMed, which is where all the drugs are registered. But to actually get the blessing to give this to patients with serious indications like diabetic ulcers, venous ulcers, burns, I did it for $24,000.
You think this could work on people with radiation burns from cancer treatment?
We actually have a clearance for radiation dermatitis.
This works for people with those persistent diabetes leg wounds, for example?
Yeah, there's been publications about how effective it is. In fact, it was as much of a shock to me that it worked so well on the chronic wounds as it was to anyone, because in the beginning, I was just sort of going. And it was the doctors who informed me that it was working so well at preventing amputation, healing chronic wounds. And also they informed me of other stuff they were using it for, things like, severe eczema. We're running drug trials right now for the same formula in eczema. Things like toenail fungus, that I never would have thought of. These doctors are clever and they'll try new things, especially because they've run out of new things in certain areas.
What doctors are even learning this is available? People that then are spreading the word, or how is it getting out?
I know at this point I was a one-man salesman. I flew 500,000 miles in 2 years on a credit line that my mom co-signed for. True story. And I just put on the sales rep hat and I said, what do you have to lose? I got 20,000 samples made. And with the label was homemade. It was one of the worst labels you've ever seen, but it was compliant and registered. And they tried it and it worked.
So where are you today? You started your own company
on
the basis of that one medicine?
Yeah. So when I got a call from the largest medical distributor in the world saying we want to carry your product, and I was still one person, and the back of the package went to my cell phone for customer support, I thought maybe I should build some infrastructure at this point. So I actually was able to raise some capital to build the company. I had never done that before. I'd never heard what a venture capital firm was at that point. And the company has grown since then. Now we've got 3 cleared products, a 4th in process. We've got 2 drug trials in process. We're doing a biodefense project with a nonprofit. The company's growing.
What's the name of the company, the name of the product that we're talking about, if you know all these things, about how much it sells for, if someone's buying it over the counter? Is this available at like a pharmacy or a doctor has to give it to you?
So at this point it's prescription, because it turns out it's easier to get. So the consumer market is really difficult to break into because you're dealing with hundreds of millions of marketing and, battling Johnson & Johnson on the shelves and stuff like that. So it's actually easier to start in the prescription market, get the doctor's blessing, and then move to OTC. That first product is called Hexogen. It's been cleared in multiple different forms for everything from atopic dermatitis to chronic wounds. But now we're working on, severe eczema and toenail fungus. And I don't know what those indications will cost because I have to let the experts weigh in on that.
But if somebody watching has a persistent skin disorder or wound, they should ask their doctor about the possibility of using this product.
They should definitely look the company up and see what we're working on.
Did you say Hexagen? Hexagen.
Yeah.
And can you say how much money, have you gotten your $24,000 back by this company?
So the company has gotten millions of dollars in funding, because once you have a bunch of patents and FDA clearances and distribution contracts, people tend to believe in you more than when it's an idea, it turns out. So the company's in really good shape at this point. We've even got a $70+ million license deal for a wound product I developed and licensed to a public company. So we're done.
So your product cured yourself?
My product cured myself, and I felt it was my duty. I feel like it's a cliche word, but it feels like the right word to use. I had to get it to other people because my story is romanticized a lot. And I love that it brings some people hope, but it was a miserable 5 years.
You lost part of your ear. You must have had reconstructive surgery.
About half of those 21 surgeries, if you can't cut it in half, but I'd say about approximately were reconstructive. I have an amazing surgeon. I mean, he was doing stitching inside the ear canals, and my scalp looks like a roadmap if you look at all the scars.
What would you say is the takeaway lesson from this for people watching after your whole experience that you went through?
The takeaway lesson for me?
I mean, to me, one of them is kind of like, never give up. Don't accept an answer that doesn't solve your problem. I don't know. But there's bigger ones involving FDA and all, I'm sure, that you can talk about.
The takeaway lesson for me is that there are things out there that we can't have in this country because they're too hard for the innovators to bring here. And I find that distressing. I find it distressing that there's very safe regenerative medicine treatments in places like Panama and Costa Rica, that Europe is 3 to 5 years ahead of us because they partner with innovators and invest in the future of healthcare. And it's time for Congress to let the FDA modernize a bit, to join us in the modern age. It's been 30 years since they've had a legislative overhaul. It's an analog process in a digital world, which we have no excuse for. We have AI now. They shouldn't make every product, no matter what it is, go through the same 10-year steps.
To see and hear more from Brad Burnham, I hope you'll watch Full Measure on Sunday, October 12th. If you happen to be listening to this after October 12th, don't worry. You can always go to fullmeasure.news and watch a replay, or go to our unadvertised Full Measure YouTube channel and watch it there. I hope you enjoyed the podcast and that you will consider sharing it with your friends, leaving a great review, and subscribing to it. And I hope you will also check out my other podcast, the Sharyl Attkisson podcast. My national bestseller, Follow the Science, How Big Pharma Misleads, Obscures, and Prevails, recently was on an Amazon bestseller list again. This book is chock full of amazing, incredible, formerly untold stories that explains a lot about why we as a nation have become so sick, even as we've never spent more on hospitals, doctors, and insurance. It has to do with scandals and cover-ups and the medical establishment, as well as the media's role in all of it. And anytime you can go to SharylAttkisson.com and click on the store tab to find some products designed exclusively for independent thinkers like you. Before long, you're going to need to find some original gifts for those hard-to-shop-for friends for Christmas. Think about the Sharyl Attkisson store. Proceeds support independent reporting causes, and the products have great slogans like, I need to find some new conspiracy theories. All my old ones came true. And do your own research, make up your own mind. Think for yourself.